So I'm gonna let my goats out, where my goats are. Let them run around the yard while I get their enclosure cleaned up and start working on my chicken's cage. The enclosure is dirty because they became restless the other day while they were waiting on us to walk them, and they dumped their water dish, and that kind of ruins their enclosure there. So going ahead and cleaning them up to then be prepared to clean the chicks. So as you can see, this enclosure isn't super ideal. So in the next video, I'll be building a new goat enclosure, which will be pretty cool. And I actually had to film this to qualify for Outstanding Market Exhibitor for the fair. So I will be doing the video of redoing the goat's enclosure. And now I am moving things around the shed because my dad kind of organized the shed. I didn't really like how it was. I wanted the chicken enclosure to be right in the corner of the shed. So I moved everything and now I'm setting it up. These are walls we made quite a few years ago when we first started keeping chickens. I believe they're made of some type of old deck board or something like that. And I am just simply screwing them together so then they're in this corner area, so then they can keep in the chickens and the shavings. You don't need anything over top because these are broilers and they don't exactly fly because they're market chickens. They get quite large and they certainly can't fly at that size. So once I have that together, I can add in the shavings and I can go ahead and add in the chicks as well, which are the same chicks you saw from the last video, but I believe this is quite a few weeks later from there. So speaking of quite a few weeks later, that was filmed on June 16th, which is like probably forever ago when this video is actually finally posted. But yeah, that was a very long time ago, and I haven't filmed anything about the chickens ever since then. So in the next video, you'll see the new goat enclosure, which I also filmed way later way back then as well. Currently, it is the 26th of July, and I'm just finally editing this video. I know my videos have been like crazy because I've kind of been editing a ton at once, and then I'll put them all on as scheduled, and then I won't deal with anything for a while. That will change, and I'll finally catch up with myself eventually during the school year because I just won't be able to do it like that. I won't have the time to do it like that. But for now, it's kind of screwed up. So now the chickens are gone. The goats are even gone. But again, in the next video, you'll see that enclosure. And this is actually a little bit of a sneak peek. There's some parts of it. But this is what the shed looks like now. I have all the stuff up there for fair, and then in this, and then it's like empty in here, and I cleaned it and everything. But the chickens, they didn't do fantastic at fair. Again, there'll be the goat video, and then I don't really plan on making any other videos about the goats and the chickens, I don't believe. I'll try to do stuff more next year and kind of do kind of similar videos, but more when they're relevant in the year, if that makes sense. So I'll kind of do that next year, hopefully. So as for now, this is the chickens. I didn't want to just make this 2 minutes long, so let's talk about the chickens a little bit. Obviously, I don't have them. Once we were done at fair, they are market birds, so we had them butchered for us because butchering chickens takes a very long time. It's very time consuming if we're doing it. So we took them somewhere, had them butchered, and now we have the meat. So that's kind of the idea of market chickens. But to properly raise them, as you saw in my last video, or if you haven't, go check it out, I showed how to properly set them up as chicks. But after that, they're not super fragile. What you want to do, though, is you want to make sure they don't get too hot or too cold. So that's why we waited until it was warm enough outside to bring them out here. And then after that, you want to start worrying about the actual heat. So in here, every single day I'd come out and I'd open up the shed doors, and when they were in the garage, which we used to last year and all the years before we didn't have the shed, we just opened up the garage door every day. And that's to make sure there's airflow. Obviously, there's no windows or anything in here. And then we'd close it up at night, and we kept the heat light on them all year. I mean, the whole time that we had them. So just to give them the opportunity to warm up if it's like a cold night or something, but also just to provide light at nighttime, because these are market birds and we wanted them eating and active at nighttime as well, which doesn't really, again, it's not like it's pretty dark in here. It was just a little bit of light. It doesn't really mess up their day-night cycle, I would imagine. Just something to keep them warm and stuff. So we had that on all the time, and as well as that, we had a fan. We actually had like a really massive fan in here that I turned on every day. I didn't have it on during the night because the nights, like I said, got pretty cold and we didn't want to like get them too cold. But you could do something like a box fan, like what's up there, or that type of fan. We also have those. We used a box fan for the goats, and then we just used shavings. This year was actually really nice. Well, kind of. So we know somebody in our 4-H group, they have an auction for pigs, but this year they couldn't have that because of the issues and stuff. They couldn't have that, so they offered up all the shavings that they had put out already for the auction, because like they said, they auction off baby pigs and they hadn't used a lot of the shavings that they put down in their barn, and they didn't want to just put them out in their field, which is what they would normally do once they were soiled or whatever from the pigs. But since they weren't soiled, they offered them to anybody who wanted to come and just like rebag them. So we didn't actually have to buy any shavings this year, which was really, really nice. So there's some leftover shavings. We just put them in large bags. So that is what we used. I don't think you could really use any type of thing. It doesn't really matter if it's the fine shavings or the rough shavings either. Or at least we found that doesn't really matter. I think this was actually like a mix of both. But I don't think you would want to use straw or something. We use straw with the goats as bedding. I think that this works very fine. It kind of keeps them clean as well. That's why we'd use it when we had to transport them, because for fair, you want the birds to look nice for showmanship and whatnot. You want to clean them before, which again, that's something that I kind of want to do a video on, is how to clean chickens, because while it's not super relevant to the reptile audience, the people who watch for reptile purposes, I really enjoy the fair and 4-H and that type of thing. And I think that's one of the things that's really important, is cleaning your birds before fair. And I don't think everybody knows that when they're going into doing fair and taking chickens. So I'd like to do a video on that to kind of teach people how to do that, because we've been doing that for a while and it worked really well this year. They were actually really clean. Unluckily, at the fair, it wasn't like normal, and for some reason we had to keep them kind of on like organic mulch substrate. So here you can see that's the floor in the area in which we had the birds, so they kind of got messy. But back to the substrate thing, I recommend shaving. So the other thing that we do with them is we put a barrier in the middle of their food and water, in the middle of the square pen that we keep them in. And this is what we put in once they're big enough to properly walk over it. So we just put it down in the middle, and then we have the food on this side and the water on this side, so then they have to go over it, and that helps build them up as well. Next year we're going to try to make a thing so the food is more readily available to all of them, because what you're looking for in a pen of market chickens is the evenness between the 3 birds. So if they all get equal amount of food, then they'll grow more evenly. Generally you'll have a range of weights and stuff, and it's not only about weight but also how they feel. They can be different weights, but if they have the same like breast feel and like leg feel, I guess, I don't know exactly I'm not very good at figuring that out because I don't really mess with that, but the judges really understand it. So I need to figure that out in future years as well. But this is one thing that we do. I'm not really sure of other things that you could do exactly, but another important thing is the actual feed that they're given. So we start off with, I want to say, like a 22 to 24% feed when you start off. And then I'm thinking you go down to like an 18% feed eventually. And I'm not exactly sure on all of that because, again, I don't know. I've not really gotten into that in the past years. It's kind of been more of my dad who like figures that out. So I need to research that and figure that out. But I believe that is correct. I know for goats, they need like 12 to 16% protein in their feed, and they're not supposed to get more than that. So it's definitely different between the ones. But stuff I need to study. This year I didn't really do very well with showmanship because I've never really studied the stuff for chickens before, so I need to get into that. We work a lot with our goats, not as much with our chickens. It's kind of hard to work with chickens in my opinion because you don't really work with them. It's more studying. Like, you can't train, or you probably could, but there's no real point in training a market bird to show it. You more just have to learn about the market bird in general. So that's something that I need to work on. And so speaking of showmanship, I can talk a little bit about that. There's the proper showmanship, and then there's the market show. So at the market show, like I said, you're looking for the evenness of the birds in each pen. So you can take 2 pens of 3 each, and that's what I did this year. And that's more of just what the judge does. You're not really judged in that point except on your chickens. So that's what you need to figure out, the proper protein amount. Like I said, you need to get them even, and that kind of whole idea. But then showmanship's more you. So it doesn't really matter about the bird. I do showmanship. You don't actually have to if you're just taking market birds, but I don't really remember why I do showmanship, but I guess I kind of like it. But with showmanship, you can have any bird. So you don't have to have a market chicken necessarily, but people take like their show birds and whatnot, or their breeding chickens and stuff like that, egg layers and different things. There's even like wood ducks and other waterfowl and stuff. So I did showmanship, and like I said, I didn't really study like I should have. But the type of thing they ask you in showmanship is the body parts of the bird and the just different terms and stuff that have to do with fowl in general. So again, I need to study more, so I'll make sure to do that and figure all those things out. I knew very little, but it's similar to reptiles. I'd like to know that type of thing for reptiles because I want to become an exotic animal vet. So it's important for me to know the body parts and how they function and all those different things that can be helpful for keeping reptiles in general and keeping birds and different things. If you have to take them to the vet or something to know how each part works, then you can know different things about if it's a concern or something. If an animal is hurt, you know which part is hurt, and you may be able to help it better if you know the different parts of your animal. One thing that I need to learn is like the different scutes of a turtle. So there's like the marginals, and then that's all I know. And so there's like the carapace, the plastron. I'd like to know all those terms and different things so I can really know what's going on with my turtles and different animals and stuff like that. So I need to study it for chickens, but I also need to study it for the other animals. So in showmanship, you also you need to know how to handle your animals. So like I said, you can't really train a market bird to know how to handle it. That's part of doing goats, though. You do need to train your goats. But with the market animal, there's not really any reason to do that because chickens don't have a whole lot of control of what you're doing to them, especially the market birds. It might be more important if you're using like egg layers or something like that, because those are agile, they're very fast, and they could definitely stress out and freak out from handling if you never handle them. But market birds, they're fat and they can't really do anything if you're going to pick them up or whatnot. You obviously don't want to hurt your bird, So it's important to know how to handle it. So I had to like show the wing. So you show like the bottom of the wing and the top of the wing. Again, I should definitely do a video with the actual chicken because I kind of understand this more. I feel like especially this year was a learning experience. Every year is kind of a learning experience. You learn more and more until you can't do fair anymore, and that doesn't matter. So you have to do that. I also now know how to hold a chicken upside down so you can show the breast that way, and I've never really done that, especially because when you're younger, your hands just aren't big enough. So now my hands are finally big enough to properly handle like large market birds. So that is something that's kind of important. I mean, we took this year we took the animals to the fair later in the year, and they like stopped having a, you didn't have to weigh them, like you need to know their weight, but the weight didn't matter. Normally there's a max out, I think at 7 pounds, I think that's normally how it is, but this year there was no max weight, so we had like over 8-pound birds, and I could hold them just fine, which was like pretty surprising to me. That's like that's a big chicken. So these are just a couple things. If you're keeping chickens or you're raising them for the fair or different things, most likely if you're keeping market birds, you are raising them for a fair, I'd imagine. I want to look into in the future raising them just to eat them, but I don't think that would be very efficient money-wise, but I don't know. Maybe I'll look into it more when I have the time to do that. So just some information about market chickens. I hope that you guys found this helpful in any way, found it interesting. If you don't know anything about fowl or anything like that, or the fair, 4-H and stuff like that. So if you did, like it down below. If you have any comments or concerns, comments below. And if for more content, then subscribe. Have a fantastic day.